Hey, Nish here, and today we're taking a look at the Blue Yeti Nano, this thing over here, which is a kind of successor but not really to the original Blue Yeti, which is a massively popular USB microphone. It can be picked up for a fairly inexpensive price. I only paid about 50 euros for mine on an Amazon warehouse deal, and that makes it kind of an affordable option for anyone looking into getting into audio recording, and that's for anything from podcasting, YouTubing, streamers, and even for a little bit of music recording. Compared to the original Blue Yeti, as you can imagine by the name, it is smaller in stature. It's also got a slightly different finish with a nice gunmetal look, which I quite like. There's also a red option. As far as I/O goes, you've got a micro USB input, unfortunately not USB Type-C, as well as a 3.5mm jack for plugging in headphones. Now this microphone has zero latency headphone monitoring, which is a very useful feature if you're using it for music recording. There aren't many controls on the microphone. You've got this dial on the front which controls the volume going to that zero latency headphone monitoring. It also acts as a mute switch, so you can press that and you can see that the LED indicator goes red when it is muted. On the back, you've got a toggle switch between two recording modes, which I'll get onto in a moment. It's worth noting that you can use the Blue Yeti Nano with a traditional mic mount, so you just have to remove it from the swivel mount and use the included adapter to use it with the traditional boom arm thing. I'm not sure what they call them. Now the Yeti Nano sits in the middle of Blue's product range, so it has more features than say the Blue Snowballs, but doesn't quite have all the features that the full fat Blue Yeti has. The main difference is the recording mode. So the Yeti Nano is missing one of its capsule or whatever they call it. It only has 2 capsules as opposed to the 3 of the Blue Yeti original, and it only has 2 of the 4 recording modes of the Blue Yeti. But those 2 are the most commonly used, and that's omnidirectional, which records in all directions equally, and cardioid, which is suited for vocals or voice, and what that does is places emphasis on what's in front of the microphone, like I'm using right now, and it will kind of reject sounds that come from the other side. The 2 that are missing that were on the original Blue Yeti are bidirectional, which is good for interviews because it records both in front and behind, and also a stereo type mode, which is good for musical instruments if you want to pick up a good kind of split on left-right when you're recording a different type of instrument. Apart from that, it's pretty similar. It actually has a higher bitrate than the Blue Yeti, but to be honest, I've not really noticed much difference in that, so I probably wouldn't heed much attention to that spec. Before I move on to my pros and cons of this microphone, I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe. Every +1 is much appreciated. Now my first pro is that I think this mic offers pretty good sound quality for the price. Hopefully you're listening to it right now, so you can let me know what you think. But I think it sounds pretty darn good, and especially compared to the original Blue Yeti, I really can't tell a difference, and I've seen other reviews where they've said something similar, really. It has the same kind of quality as that has, but at a lower price. So I think it's a really good value option overall. The other things I liked about the Blue Yeti, I also like here. I like that it's a USB microphone, it's plug and play, very easy to use and set up. And I also like that it has that zero latency headphone monitoring because it gives you that option if you want to do some music recording. One thing that might be handy for streamers is that Blue have a sort of software that you can use to apply equalizers and various types of audio effects to the microphone live. So if you're streaming and you want to apply those effects in vivo live, then that's a decent option they've got there. Obviously it's not going to apply to everyone. And the last thing is it's a fairly portable small microphone, so especially when you fold it away with the swivel, it doesn't take up a lot of space, so I could see this easily being stashed away if you want to take it with you in places. Moving on to my cons, the main thing is going to be the lack of those 2 recording modes that were on the original Yeti. Now obviously it's going to depend on what your use case for this microphone is, but potentially those could be some quite useful recording modes. And to be honest, yes, while the Yeti Nano is cheaper than the Yeti's been around for a while, so there's a good chance you could find one used for a decent price. And honestly, I'd say if you could find a Yeti for a cheap price used, then I'd just go for that because there's not really much difference. You just have those 2 extra modes, albeit it's a slightly larger. The second thing, and I'm not sure if it's just me, so one of the things that's different about the Yeti Nano compared to the original Yeti is that the Yeti had a gain control on the microphone as well as what you'd have in your software, whereas the Yeti Nano doesn't have that. It only has the gain control you'd have in your software. So for example, on Audacity, I've got a gain control, and I have to put it pretty high. I mean, I'm not super close to the microphone right now, but I do have to put it on something like 94% in order to pick up a decent level. And I was surprised by this because I recall with the Yeti, I had a lot of headroom. I didn't have to crank up that gain much at all. So yeah, I don't know if it would really matter. I think it would depend if you're trying to record some really quiet stuff, and so it's not going to come up for everyone, but I thought I'd mention it because it's something I noticed. My last minor gripes are with the controls. There's a couple things I'm not a huge fan of. One thing is that the headphone volume knob has no indicator of where you actually are on the volume. I mean, they could have just put a notch there or something to let you know, but it's a little thing. It doesn't really matter too much. And the other thing is the toggle control and indicator for the recording mode is on the back of the microphone, which evidently you can't see without, turning over the microphone. And, they could have just put the indicator on the front rather than on the back, but I just thought I'd mention it in case it would infuriate you to the extent of not wanting it. When it comes to other options, of course, the USB microphone market is a lot more crowded these days. I mean, the Blue Yeti's been around for a long time, and when it came out initially, it was kind of a bit of a pioneer, and really now every company has got their own stamp on this type of microphone. Honestly, with the big brands, I'm not sure there's going to be much difference between them, to be quite honest. Your Rode, Audio-Technica, there are a lot of, I don't want to say knockoff, but there's a lot of random kind of vague Chinese brands floating around these days, and I've not personally had much experience with them, so I honestly can't comment that much. But, if you've had experience with them, let me know. And for example, a brand like Samsung has been around for a little while, and I think they're also making some good gear. So generally, it's hard for me to compare this to other options, other brands. I can say, obviously, I've mentioned versus the original Yeti, there's those differences in recording modes, which are worth noting. And generally, I'd say what you want to look out for is making sure that the microphone you pick has all of the recording modes that you want. So be that omnidirectional cardioid, because sometimes they only have one or the other. And that is about everything. Thank you very much for listening. Hope this was useful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. But otherwise, subscribe for more to the point content, and I'll catch you in the next one.